The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Okay, good morning, everybody. My name is Emma Williams. I'm happy to welcome you all to today's support lab. We're going to be talking about formulas in ExpressView. Before I go any further, please, if you could, let me know that y'all can hear me, see my screen. A Y or a yes in the questions box would be very helpful right now. And looks like we're coming through loud and clear. Okay, great. So once again, thank you all for joining me today. We've got a really fun topic prepared. I have some really neat content to show you guys today. I'm very excited about today's lab. We're going to be talking about formulas in ExpressView today. Now, this is a newer feature for Exago. It was introduced in version 2018.1. So if you're not yet operating on that version, or if you have yet to see that version of Exago, this is something that you can look forward to, maybe get an understanding today on today's webinar of what you might be able to do with this feature or expose to your end users if you are an administrator yourself. And, you know, if you are already on 18.1, maybe you're following along, have a version of Exago open in front of you and creating some of these formulas as we go. However you're using today's lab, I'm really happy you guys are here. And we're going to jump right in. So what is this feature? Why is it worth a lab? What are we really here to talk about? Well, if you've used Exago's Advanced Report Designer, you might be familiar with the concept of our formula editor. We have brought this feature to ExpressView, and really with a bit of a different use case in mind. Formulas in ExpressView are intended to allow those end users who are using ExpressView to create views of their data, quick dynamic understandings of the data values and maybe how they relate to each other. We wanted to give you guys a little bit more flexibility there. So it's the ability to define and display a column of data based on a formula. And today I'm going to be walking through not only how to create the formulas, you know, how do we use the functions with each other, maybe within each other, but I'm going to kind of focus on use cases. How are these formulas helping us to really understand our data and make it mean something more to us? How can we make these reports more indicative of the information we're attempting to pull from our data? So if you could, I would ask that you keep that in mind as we move throughout today's lab. Don't focus on exactly how we're using the feature, but what it does for us. What does it do to our reports? How does it transform our data into something that means something? So why might I use formulas in ExpressView, and really specifically in that designer, right? Maybe you don't have access to or simply aren't comfortable in the Advanced Report Designer. That is really meant for more of a power user functionality. Maybe you do have access to and are comfortable in the Advanced Report Designer, but you're just looking to create a quick view of your data in this case, and that's really what ExpressView is for. Now, we're going to talk just briefly about the idea of custom columns. These are calculated fields that your administrator can create for you and make available to you, just as any other data field might appear available. And so if you already have a custom column, potentially you're not using a formula in ExpressView. But if you don't, formulas are a great way to really take the power into your own hands and create the metric you're looking to see. Maybe one of those metrics is simple calculations to give your data meaning. I apologize. I think you guys weren't following along on the slides. Are we good now? Can you see the right slides? Okay, great. Sorry about that, everybody. I had it paused. So this last bullet point, right? Simple calculations to give my data meaning. This is really the underlying point of today's lab. So things to keep in mind as we go, and I've kind of slightly touched on a few of these. We'd like you guys to keep in mind that we can't yet filter by a formula field. Now, we can always circumvent this filtering by the original field, right? Maybe we'd like to filter by the year. We created a formula to display the year of some metric. Ordered date is what we're going to be using today. we can get around that by simply filtering by the original field and defining that range. Now, the yet in parentheses is super important. Keep your eyes open down the road for filter by formula. We're all really excited about that, but that is down the road. So for now, we're going to talk about some ways you might work around that, right? If you do find that you're using a formula on every report, it might be a really good custom column use case. So really, we encourage you to touch base with your administrators if you're unsure. If you're using a formula over and over again on every report, it's probably a really good use case. So reach out to your administrator, have that conversation, open up that dialogue. Finally, we don't need to write aggregation formulas in ExpressView. So if you are used to the Advanced Report Designer, you might be used to writing formulas like ag count of some metric to count up everything, right? In ExpressView, we have automatic aggregations at the end of each grouping. So we don't need to define that formula manually. This takes away some of the work on our end, but it's just important to keep in mind. Finally, what are we going to walk through today? So I have 5 examples prepared for you guys, and we're going to do them all on the same report. We're going to work from the understanding that we'd like to create some meaning, some understanding from a set of data values. I'm going to use 5 formulas together on the same report, as I said, to give us that understanding, a deeper understanding of our data. Now, the specifics of those, we're going to talk about date formulas. I don't want to spend too long on this slide, but date formulas, some string concatenations. I'm going to show you a few ways that string concatenations are actually super powerful. Logic formulas to display more informative text. So based on a field, what do we actually want to understand from this field? Why do I have this data on my report? And what is it that it's indicating to me? Can I just display text that is quickly interpreted and maybe a better indication than the data value itself? Some numeric calculations to eliminate guesswork. Can I do a calculation right on my canvas as opposed to displaying 2 fields and asking my users or myself to make assumptions based on those fields? Make it a little more black and white for myself or my users. And finally, we have an advanced case lined up for you guys. We're going to show you how to use the hyperlink function. This is a particularly fun function, and really that advanced case that we're going to highlight at the end of today's lab. So, without further ado, let's hop over to Exago. If anyone has any questions at any point during today's lab, I'm sure at this point there's probably not too many questions, but if anything pops into your head, feel free to type it into our questions pane at any time. I do have 2 of my colleagues here to handle questions on the back end. They'll be flagging me down if there's anything good for the entire group, and we'll certainly talk through all of those. We're going to take our time today and make sure that we all really understand everything fully, right? So I'm going to open up a new ExpressView. We're going to start from scratch today. Now, a few changes to the UI of ExpressViews with the addition of this new functionality. So when I open up the designer right away, we can see this Add Formula button. That's new. It allows me to create a formula from scratch. We also have the Selected Cell menu, and I'm going to walk through that once I have some data on my canvas. It's a very simple to use menu, but it really allows me to utilize this formula functionality as well as style those cells appropriately. So I'm going to touch on all of that today. The first thing I'd like to do is drag some data onto my canvas. We're going to start with maybe a rough idea of what we'd like our report to show us at the end. And to do so, we're going to start with just some generic data fields. So I know that I'd like to create an orders report. I know that I want to see the orders in relation to employees. So the first thing I'm going to do is just drag over my employee last name field. Some other info that I might want is the date of the order, right? I want to know when these orders were processed and maybe do some comparisons, years or quarters. I'd like to be able to see where the bulk of our orders are falling. I'm going to pull in order ID simply to have that identifier for each order, and then a little bit of info per order. So we're going to open up order details. I'd like to know, was there a discount applied? I'd like to know the unit price. And finally, I'd like to know the product names. What are we actually selling here? I'm actually going to restructure just a bit and pull product name over in front of discount and unit price. So we've got all the data that we'd like to work with on our canvas. Now, it doesn't mean too much yet. There's very little structure on my canvas. And if I actually run this report right now, we can see maybe that it doesn't really give me any insights. What I mean by that is I have repeated information all over my canvas. I have the last names listed many times. I have the dates listed in accordance with the actual date, as opposed to, like I said in the beginning, maybe a year grouping or something that means a little bit more to me. The first thing I'm going to do is group by last name, right? In my report design process, one of the first things I usually do once I have the relevant data on my report is give it some structure. So maybe that starts by grouping by last name. I just ran my report. We saw the last names repeated over and over again. Now, if I run my report, it's a little bit more helpful. We can see that all of these are under the heading Buchanan, and when I scroll, my sticky headers allow me to really know where I'm working within. But let's imagine that in my organization, maybe there's two employees with the last name Buchanan, which makes this much less helpful as a report design. I don't know if this is Stephen Buchanan or my other Buchanan. Come up with some, insert first name here, right? Someone else named Buchanan. So I can use a formula, and this is where my selected cell menu is going to come in handy. I'm going to play around throughout the lab with creating formulas with live data on and off. But for now, let's start with it off, start at the basics. I'll open up my selected cell menu. Now, there's two little subheadings within this menu. The first is called Style. This allows me to edit, the tooltip's actually very helpful, to edit text, data formats, conditional properties, anything styling related. The formula is actually going to open up maybe a view that you're used to seeing if you've worked within our formula editor. But this is going to be a list of all functions available to me. Now, I did mention at the top of the lab that aggregations are not going to be something we use this formula editor for, since they're already populating automatically at the bottom of each grouping. So you may have noticed that grouping is actually missing from this list here. So we're eliminating it before it maybe even became a problem or a confusion point. What I'd like to do now is make this last name field a little bit more indicative of what employee is actually representing. If I click the last name field, it opens up my formula editor. Now, this is what the formula editor looks and feels like in ExpressView. It's a small box. It's going to be tied to, right, whatever field I clicked. And now I have free reign. I can type in this box. It will maintain that code completion logic that we're used to. So everything should be really, really easy, really intuitive here. Now, what I'd like to do here is a string concatenation that's going to represent the employee full name. I know that I have a last name field. I also have a first name field. Concatenate them together. I get a full name, a full understanding of which employee this is. Now, best practice is going to dictate that I account for any spacing I'd like to see here. But to really illustrate what I mean by that, I'm going to do it without accounting for that first. Then we're going to come back in and fix this so it looks a little bit better. So maybe the first time I go in to make this formula, I know what I want, right? A really good, a good practice, a good habit to get into is saying out loud what you're looking for out of a formula before you actually write it down or attempt to create it in Exago. Sometimes speaking out loud actually tends to fall into the format that the formula might take. So in this case, I'd like to see the employee last name and the employee first name. Last name is the field already there. We're all set. My ampersand is my shorthand for a concatenation. So this is a little trick. We do have a concatenate function that's used a little bit differently. This is the easiest way to do it. So I definitely recommend using ampersand here. And then I said I want the first name. Now, when I start typing, it's actually going to autocomplete to fields that match the text that I've typed. It's also going to autocomplete to any functions. You'll see that I use that later on in the lab. And I can go ahead and press enter to insert the highlighted data field. Now this looks great, right? Last name, I want to see the first name. This is awesome. I'm pretty sure I've got it down. So I can press OK. One other thing I want to mention is that we can also edit the column header name. So right now it's going to display this entire formula in the cell, right? But perhaps I'd just like this to say employee name. So let's go ahead and change that, make it a little bit more intuitive. The equal sign will remain to indicate to me that this is a formula, but it's a little bit more readable there. Now, if I press live data, we're going to see that the formula worked properly. We have the last name and the first name, but the formatting is a little off, right? It's smushed together. It's one word, and maybe we could make this look a little bit prettier. This is a simple fix and something that you should really get in the habit, like I mentioned, of considering when you're doing string concatenations. We need to tell Exago where we would like space. I can do that by simply concatenating yet another string into my formula. So open parentheses is going to indicate the start of a string. I'm going to throw a comma in there because good formatting says I should have a comma after the last name. Close my parentheses, so this becomes a new string that we're concatenating together, another ampersand, and the first name. This will reload for me, and we're going to see a much nicer display of that employee full name. All right, so we're kind of just warming up here, right? Getting our feet wet. That was a really simple formula. It looks like everybody's following along really well. I don't see any questions, so that's always a good sign. The next thing, and really abstracting formulas away from it, the next thing that I might just want to do with this report is understand how it relates to the time component on my canvas here. So I've got lots of dates here, and each is associated with a different order. But let's take a real use case, right? Maybe what I'm looking for is to understand how Stephen Buchanan did in 2014, or how Stephen Buchanan did in terms of sales for Q3 of 2014. Now, I certainly know that July 4th, 2014 was in Q3 of 2014, but I'd have to really go through and count up the rows of data that meet that condition. What I can do instead is use a formula. Now, if I select this cell, right, this is really one cell to Exago holding this field that then repeats. I'm going to wipe the field that was already in there. We're going to start from scratch. And all I need to do is use my year function. Once I start typing, it does autocorrect to the year function because it matches the text that I've typed. Really helpful is the tooltips that accompany each function. So we always have this as an aid when we're creating these. I'm going to press enter. The only argument it expects is the input date, and I know that I want to use my order date. So again, I start typing, shows me what I want, press enter to insert. Press OK here. We're going to see just the year get pulled out of that order date field, excuse me, and populate my column, same as the full date did, but this time we're only seeing the year. Now, a few things I'd like to change here. Oops, sorry about that. The first thing that I'd like to do is change the heading here so I can go ahead and use my little pen to do so. I'd like to change my column header to just say year maybe. Maybe I'd also like to group by the year now because we've got it repeating for each value. So instead, I'd like to create a grouping. I've got Stephen Buchanan. Now I can see orders for 2014. If we want to take that one step further, we can actually use our concatenation in a different way. Initially, we concatenated two fields, two data fields. Now we're going to concatenate two functions. This is a formula saying pull out the year from the order date. I'm going to do a concatenation. We're going to account for that spacing, just like we talked about last time. Now I want to show the quarter. So I'd like to break it down first by year, then by quarter. So I'm going to use the quarter name function. And again, I'd like it to be of the ordered date, right? We're still working with the same field. Now we'll see this reload. It'll show me 2014 Q3 is the first quarter I have data for, followed by Q4, and then we start with 2015 Q1. Okay, so it looks like we're still doing really well on questions. If you're currently typing one or something pops into your head, feel free to submit it at any time. Like I said, I do have two colleagues here, happy to answer any questions you guys might have. But I'm going to keep going for now. Okay. So maybe the next thing that I would like to talk about or I'd like to modify on my report has to do with this discount field, right? I can close out my selected cell menu. Let's just take a look at what we've already got on our canvas. This discount field represents the discount applied to each product for each order, right? For this product, the discount was 0, which means it is still full price. For this product, the discount was 15% off, which means the unit price, or rather the actual price, should now reflect the unit price with that discount applied. But currently the way I have my data on the canvas, it's not indicative of that, right? We have to do that calculation in our heads every time to understand what the actual price becomes. First, I'd like to do two formulas here to really make this data mean something. The first thing I'd like to do has to do with the discount field. I don't want to see the actual discount. Let's say I would just like to know if the product is discounted or full price. What I'm going to do, we're going to start from scratch again. I'm going to use a logic function this time, particularly an if. Now the if function expects 3 arguments, the first of which is the condition. The most important thing to understand about the condition of an if function is that it must evaluate to true or false. This means it can't return a value other than yes or no. Is it true or is it not true? There is no in between, right? So in this case, I'm going to make this condition dependent on the discount field itself. And I'm going to say if it's greater than 0, right? If it's anything above 0, there is a discount applied to that product. So what I'd like for my consequent, now the consequent is returned if my condition evaluates to true. If the discount is greater than 0, the product is discounted. So I would like to display a string that simply says is discounted. The alternative is the else. So if functions are a really good use case for saying out loud what you'd like to see before you write your formula. If I read this out loud, if discount greater than 0, product is discounted, else product is full price, right? This makes sense. Now, if I press my check, we go ahead and apply that formula. We're going to see full price is discounted. Full price is discounted, right? This becomes much more helpful than seeing a decimal value. Again, I'd like to go ahead and change my header here. So I'm going to call this discounted. Now the second half of gaining an understanding from the application of a discount or not to this product is actually going to have to do with displaying the adjusted price as opposed to the unit price. I want to know what people actually paid for this product, not what the price was before we applied a discount. That doesn't actually help me. What I'm going to do here is start from scratch. So as opposed to writing a formula based on a field already on my canvas, I'm going to use my Add Formula button. This is the other way that we can manipulate this. And you'll see that the only difference is that it starts with an empty column. We're going to start with a blank canvas here. I'm going to name it first. We'll call this adjusted price, right? Now I can add my formula, and let's build this out together. So what I would like to show here is if, again, I'm going to speak out loud. If the discount is 0, let's show the unit price, because if there is no discount, the unit price is also the adjusted price. If the discount is not 0 or else, we would like to show the adjusted price. Now that adjusted price is going to be unit price times quantity 1 minus the discount. If that didn't make sense to anybody right off the bat, we're going to go ahead and write this out. Okay, so our condition, discount equals 0, right? We have no red squigglies. We know our syntax is good. And when we spoke our formula aloud, this is what we were checking for. Now, if that's true, if our discount is 0, that means that the product is still at full price and our unit price will represent the adjusted price. This is where it gets cool. We're going to nest a formula within our if formula to calculate this adjusted price correctly. The adjusted price, and I talked through it once, but let's just talk through it one more time to make sure it makes sense to everyone. The adjusted price is going to be comprised of the unit price multiplied by, and I said quantity because we're going to include parentheses here to ensure that the calculation within the parentheses is done prior to multiplying that value by the unit price. This is simple mathematic order of operations. If you guys are familiar with PEMDAS, this should make sense. Taking everybody back to elementary school. Within the parentheses, we would like the value 1 minus the discount. Because if our discount is 15%, that means our product now costs 85% of the original price. Okay. So if everybody feels good here, it looks like we still don't have any questions. I think everyone's following along really well. We're going to go ahead and press our check OK our formula, and we're going to see that adjusted price display here. Now, quick check for everybody really following along closely, wants to check my math here. The only adjusted price values that should differ from the unit price values are the ones where this discounted field displays is discounted. This this product is discounted. Unit price was 3.6. Now we're looking at an adjusted price that is less than that because the discount was applied. All right. So again, there's still no questions. It looks like everybody's doing really well, staying on top of things here. So good job, everybody. I'm going to remove the unit price field from my canvas since now really what I'm interested in is the adjusted price, and I have that displaying here. I'd like to take a moment to just talk about the style option of my selected section menu. We've used the formula submenu over and over again, but we haven't yet used the style menu. The adjusted price is a great place to do so. So this is a price, we know that, but it doesn't really look like a monetary value. So I'm going to open up my data format menu, change it to a number, and use a currency symbol. couple of clicks and we're all set. We're exactly where we want to be. This style menu shouldn't feel that different from any other data formatting that you've done in Exago. You know, the verbiage is the same, the options are the same. It just lives in a different place now on ExpressView. So we wanted to just highlight that for you guys. Okay, so finally, we're going to do our really cool power function. If you've been following along so far, let's see if we can round it out with a full understanding of our really cool function, right? I'm going to use this product name to do so. Now, the hyperlink function is a really cool functionality in Exago. I've seen it used in a lot of different ways. Today, I'm going to actually link to just a Google search, but a good use case to kind of keep in the back of your mind is maybe a product profile or some page within the host application of Exago that you'd like to navigate to, right? I can do this right from within Exago. So I'm going to add this function on product name. I'm going to start from scratch again so we can see the entire process. The function is called hyperlink. So I'm going to grab that one. Now my tooltip is super helpful. It expects one argument, right? One mandatory argument here. It's called address. That's simply going to be the URL that we'd like to navigate to. So it does need to be contained in quotes. Let's open with a quote. I'm going to paste in, like I said, a simple Google search. Now, the neat part is that we can use that string concatenation logic that I showed you twice now. We've used that successfully twice. To make sure that this URL is not generic, we can actually make it different based on the product name that is clicked. I'm going to use our ampersand, and we're simply going to say concatenate that Google search URL, that string that I've given you as my address, with the, with the product name. Okay. Now this entire thing will become the URL that I navigate to. And of course, it won't say products.product name. It will be one of these product names. So if I press my check, we're going to see the formula reload. Right? This is exactly what we just dictated. Let me close out this and we can navigate to a Google search of one of these product names. The first thing I want to change about this, because there's still a few things that I'm not really keen on about that formula. The first is simply the heading. I'd like this to read maybe product search so that it's indicating that, hey, this is a clickable field. But the second thing is the formula itself. You know, I wasn't really looking for my report to hold a URL. I just wanted it to utilize that URL. So the hyperlink function actually has an optional second argument. And that's mentioned in my tooltip here, optionally display text in place of the address. So to dictate my display field, my display text, I can put a comma. This is indicating that I will have a second argument in this function, in this formula. And that second argument is simply going to be the product name, right? I want to see the actual product name that I'm going to search, but I don't want to see the rest of the URL. This is now going to make my report look exactly like it did before I applied the hyperlink function, but I maintain the clickable functionality to then search any product contained on my canvas. Okay, so that's really the content that I had prepared for you guys. Those are the functions that I wanted to show you today. Really, just one last time, the takeaway that I'm hoping you guys all got from this lab is not so much how to use the feature, though I definitely hope you learned how to do that. I'm hoping that everyone has a better understanding of how to use formulas in ExpressView to actually make your data mean something to yourself, to other users that might come in and view this report, and at the end of the day, get more out of your reporting experience with Exago. So Oh, cool. Okay, it looks like we got one question. Absolutely, we can use formulas in advanced reports. So first and foremost, you guys have always been able to use the formula editor in advanced reports. It looks very similar to what we just experienced today, but it is one pop-out screen instead of a couple different interfaces. And at the end of the day, you can convert this Express view if you'd like to an advanced report, in which case your formulas would convert as well, and you'll be able to continue manipulation of maybe the view, the formatting, whatever the case may be there. So absolutely. So couple housekeeping things just while we kind of hang out here for any lingering questions. We just open this up again. We actually have not yet chosen a topic for August's End User Support Lab. So we're really asking you guys more now than ever to input on that post-lab survey topics that you'd like to see. You know, we base these off of things you guys ask for. So if there's something you're really itching to see on a lab, let us know, and we'll do our best to work it into the schedule upcoming. Finally, tune into the next lab in 2 weeks. It should be on July 25th for information regarding batch REST calls, another functionality introduced in version 2018.1. So we're really excited about this. We really hope you're able to attend. If not, of course, a recording will always be sent to you folks afterwards. I think that's going to round us out today. It looks like we're all good. So thank you very much for attending. Happy reporting and have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday.